Thank you.
Item number 9 is a public hearing to consider text amendments to Chapter 26 of the City Code relating to the comprehensive zoning ordinance. Ask the clerk to perform the second reading of this item, please.
An ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the City Code relating to the comprehensive zoning ordinance by amending Section 2-1, 4-2.01b, Section 6-2.014, Section 6-2.014F, Section 6-2.014G, Section 6-2.014I, Section 6-2.014J, Section 9-2.015, Section 20-2.0122H, Section 20-2.0133, Section 20-2.0133A, Section 20-2.0133H, Section 20-2.0133I, Section 20-2.0133J, thereof to alter the definition of and requirements for long-term care facilities in residential areas to comply with the requirements of state law.
Mr. Benson, anything to add on behalf of the let me back up before you do that. I'm going to reopen the public hearing at this time and ask the board if they have any ex parte communication they'd like to share on this matter at this time. None appearing. Mr. Benson, on behalf of the staff, would you please review the application?
Just a quick overview. Excuse me. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 9 in favor and 0 against, recommends approval of this amendment, or these amendments. The primary purpose of the amendments is to bring the city zoning ordinance or city code into compliance and alignment with the state statute, particularly related to the terminology that the state uses related to long-term care facilities. The proposed amendment updates the city's zoning ordinance to mirror state statutes particularly in regard to the definition of types of facilities, number, and types of persons provided care as recommended by the Department of Health and Senior Services for the state of Missouri. I'd be happy to answer any other further questions, or I can go into more detail if you'd like.
Any questions, Mr. Benson, at this time?
Just one.
Mr. Hamilton.
Is this a requirement that we must comply with the state regulations, or is it optional? I'm just curious.
It's not a mandate from the state that we comply. It's just more of the terminology we use is not consistent with the state of the terminology used by the state of Missouri as it relates to long-term care facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff at this time? Okay, I'm going to, oops, not yet, please. Would anyone in the audience like to address the board on this particular matter at this time? Once, twice. Record shows no one in the audience would like to address the board on this particular matter, so we're going to move past the public comment section. Any questions of staff or Mr. Hamilton, anything you'd like to add as I close the public hearing and move to board discussion?
Second.
Mr. Hamilton's got the motion to approve. Mr. Pardue has a second on that. Any further discussion? Once, twice. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Hamilton?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Ertz?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Melson?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Item number 10, please.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a grant agreement with the State of Missouri Department of Economic Development for administration of a Neighborhood Stabilization Program 3 grant awarded by the Missouri Department of Economic Development under the Community Development Block Grant Program. and the Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008, designating the City of Raytown as the lead party for coordination and administration of such grant funds.
Ms. Lynn, as Community Development Director, anything to add on this topic of great interest?
Yeah, just wanted to walk Mayor and Board of Aldermen through some information included in your RBA tonight and be glad to answer questions. As you will remember, in January of 2011, I was before this board and the mayor asking for a resolution of support in our submitting of a grant as part of the Neighborhood Stabilization Program 3. We submitted that application as the lead city in conjunction with the City of Grandview and the City of Sugar Creek. At the end of March, the city received notification from the Missouri Department of Economic Development that the application had been approved and awarded funding in the amount of $1,250,000. Based on that funding approval, we have before you tonight a draft ordinance that would authorize the mayor to execute the grant agreement between the City of Raytown as the lead agency and the Missouri Department of Economic Development for the purposes of implementing programs focused on rehabbing or demolishing and rebuilding vacant and foreclosed homes in the target area. Just as a reminder, the target area is the area between Blue Ridge Cutoff and Woodson from 59th Street to 53rd Street. That target area was developed with the MARC staff. When we looked at the application, they had a lot of information out there about existing statistics and how we would qualify best. So we used that geographic information systems and worked with the MARC staff to try and identify a target area we thought would be most competitive in the application process. The agreement before you tonight, as this is a little bit unique, the previous programs for neighborhood stabilization that the Raytown has participated in, we've been a partner city and not the lead city. As the lead city, it does require some additional responsibilities for the grant. The city has released 2 requests for proposals, one for a grant administrator position and one for a housing specialist position. Both of those would be contract services that would be reimbursable through the grant funds. The grant administrator would be the person who would do the paperwork implementation of the project, make sure that we're in compliance with all the CDBG requirements, environmental review, financial management, procurement. As you can imagine, this program, the binders that I've seen from the other cities are 3 and 4 inches in several of them. As you can imagine, the community development staff doesn't have the ability to take on that additional responsibility, but the grant does allow funds to allow us to hire a grant administrator to help us with that. Plus, they have the expertise having done this kind of program before. The second position or contract services that would be reversible through the grant would be what's called a housing specialist. A housing specialist would be the individual that would take projects from inception to completion. They would be the ones out in the target area looking for vacant and foreclosed homes, identifying them, doing the inspections, doing the making an offer, doing the rehabilitation or the demo, and tear down all the, administering all the contracts with the contractors, the builders, the subcontractors, working through all the inspection process. When there's federal funding involved, then you have to do radon and lead and mold and asbestos. I was forgetting one. So that housing specialist is really the person who is an expert in the housing field and how we can make that visible difference in constructing these kinds of homes. As of the RFP proposal process for those 2 positions closed today, so staff will be reviewing those proposals that we've received. We'll be sending them out to our partner cities. So assuming that if the grant were approved tonight or the ordinance or at the next meeting, I apologize, this is the first reading. If the ordinance is approved at the next meeting, then we would anticipate bringing interlocal agreements with our partner cities to the Board of Aldermen for consideration in May, and also contract for services with the grant administrator and the housing specialists in May. I'd be glad to answer any questions that the board members might have.
Questions of Ms. Lynn, starting on my right. I'm going to go to Ms. Melson first.
I do have a couple of questions. The area that is defined in this grant from 59th Street to 53rd, Blue Ridge to Woodson, that can't be changed, can it? Because that was what the grant is for exactly.
Correct.
Okay. And then does the community development staff set the salaries for the grant and the housing positions, or how does that work?
I should correct that there would be a contract for services, so it's not a position.
Okay.
It's very similar to when Public Works does an RFP for engineering services. So in our request for proposals, we asked for them to include their qualifications and their experience and their resume, and then in a sealed envelope include their contract for services amount.
Okay.
So we do our evaluation based on qualifications first, and then
okay.
negotiate a price to go with that.
Okay, excellent. Also within this agreement, it has about a citizen participation plan. Is that something that's already in place, or?
What number are you on?
Sorry, that is page 2 of 2, and it's number 17. Comply with the citizen participation requirements.
All CDBG program, because the NSP program is part of the larger community development block grant program, it has a requirement for citizen participation. That's one of the things that the grant administrator would help us to make sure that we're meeting those requirements. I don't know the answer. I can find out if we would have to actually have a citizen meeting or something like that. Obviously, if the grant were awarded and we were and accepted by the Board of Aldermen, we would want to be letting the residents in that area know about it, or residents that would be interested in purchasing a home know about it. So obviously there's lots of opportunity for citizen engagement in that manner.
That would make sense. And the amount of $1,250,000, is that split between 3 cities?
That's yet to be determined. As you are aware, we've participated before, but our area has been so small in the other cities that we didn't, while we were awarded the large amount as a partner city, we didn't actually have any houses that qualified. One of the things that if the Board of Aldermen approved the grant agreement at the next meeting, then we would be meeting with the partner cities to determine how that money would be shared. In my personal opinion, as lead city, we take on lots of additional responsibility, and I think that my goal would be to lobby for just slightly more than our share.
And so, but do those houses have to be identified at that time?
No.
It's just an amount of money, and then we kind of draw down from that.
Right. If you look on the actual funding approval, there were some kind of general numbers that were included for different types of activities, but we did not have any addresses specifically identified already. A lot of that would depend on what's available on the market, what's available in the foreclosure market, because what we have seen is, especially with regard to houses that are held by HUD, that were obtained through the foreclosure market, is they are not on the market very long because the price is so cheap. So even though it was on the market today, it might not be on the market by the time all the ducks were in a row for us to start the actual purchase process.
So when you go to the meeting with the other 2 cities and we don't have any identified properties and they do?
They don't.
Is that, it doesn't? Oh, okay. All right. That's good to know. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Asher.
I noticed that most of this comes through the Missouri Department of Economic Development. Is the money actually federal money, or is the money state money?
It's federal money that gets allocated to the state of Missouri to Department of Economic Development because they oversee the community development block grant funds.
So it's federal money?
Yes.
Okay. How long has this program been around? Is this like a brand new program? I kind of gathered this is not really a new one. It's only been changed slightly. Is that correct?
Right. There has been previous neighborhood stabilization programs. There's been Neighborhood Stabilization Program 1 and Program 2. We're now in Program 3. So it's my understanding that they have kind of changed each time, trying to further their goals of making sustainable, affordable housing.
So how long has that program been around? Could you give me an estimate, 10 years, 15, 20?
CDBG's been around for decades. Right.
Okay. So that's not a new program.
Yeah.
Who actually chose the specific circumscribed bounds here, 50, that we have listed in our, is that our staff or was that the state?
No, our staff worked with Mid-America Regional Council. What we did is when the program came out, then the Department of Economic Development put a mapping tool up on their website that allowed you to test target areas to see which ones would qualify with the best or be the most competitive. We identified 2 target areas that looked like they could be fairly competitive. This particular area, and then an area neighborhood surrounding the former Walmart and Hy-Vee site. And this one, based on the numbers that we saw, was the very most competitive in the city of Raytown. So I think from our perspective, what we tried to do is make our grant the most competitive so that we were able to try and get the most dollars.
So I kind of gather what you mean from that is that most competitive means that this was the most blighted area or the area that had the largest number of vacant houses?
Right. They have several factors that they look at as far as which ones are bank-owned, meaning foreclosures, how many they think are vacant, loans that have been identified at risk. And so this particular area took all those factors together and seemed to be, unfortunately, maybe in the worst shape, which made it the most competitive.
Okay, and it says here, unlike previous NSP programs, these funds may be used on any home within this target area, not just foreclosed properties. That leads me to believe that if any house goes up for sale, that any buyer could then follow this program and get grant money through it for a down payment. Is that correct?
Yes, it's not the buyer that would get it. What would happen is, as the home becomes vacant, if it's dilapidated and clearly in need of either serious rehab or demolition and rebuild, the housing specialist would identify that piece of property. It would actually be purchased through that housing specialist and then would go through the process and then sold for home ownership.
That doesn't lead me to believe it would be any home within the targeted area that goes up for sale.
It can't be.
That's what it actually says. I'm just trying to understand it.
Right.
It says, unlike previous ones, they may be used on any home within the target area, period.
Okay, so I should clarify that it should say any home that is dilapidated. If it's in a condition
blighted.
where...
We'll just say use the word blighted. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of using the word blighted, but yes, if it's a home that's clearly in very good condition or well maintained, there is absolutely no reason to spend neighborhood stabilization dollars to try and...
I just wanted to understand what that meant because it didn't sound like that on paper, that's all. Are we going to really go target the areas, the homes that are actually been abandoned and foreclosed on, or are we going to look for these other homes too? Or what's your primary focus here?
I think we will look for any home that is at risk of being a property maintenance, or I think you can look at categories of vacant and abandoned. You can look at categories of foreclosure, and I will tell you that my code enforcement officer in that area already has a list that's 4 pages long of properties that she has seen in the time that she's had that area, which is almost 5 years, of properties that she thinks and knows that are vacant and or foreclosed that could use the help.
Right. I'm just going to do a clarification here because I did have a constituent call, so there's an understanding to the public what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Basically, if a house has been abandoned or has been foreclosed on, it needs to be renovated to be resold. We could receive money to do that, and then if someone wanted to buy it, they would qualify to buy it. They could make an offer on that property. In order to do that, they have to take these classes that's required by the federal government to make sure that they are financially stable. That means they manage their money. We don't get the house back. And also, they know how to take care of it. And that's a qualification for buying the home. So
right. When a house goes on for sale, then an individual would make an offer on the property. The housing specialist would go through a very rigorous process for income qualifications for that individual, depending on which category of home it's being sold at. If they do qualify and the offer is accepted, then that potential homeowner would have to go through a certification class of home ownership classes on what it means to maintain a home, what kinds of things you do for annual maintenance, those kinds of things. In addition, they would go through financial counseling to make sure that they understand how to do budgets and how does a home budget compare to maybe what they've done in the past. So absolutely, we hope to arm people with all the tools that make them a asset to the neighborhood.
Right, and that's a logical recourse that the federal government's put in place as a requirement for buying the home because they're getting a pretty good deal for it to make sure that it's properly cared for.
Right.
And that they do have their finances in order. We don't get it foreclosed on again.
Right.
So I'm just clarifying that because there were some people that believe that we're just wasting federal tax dollars by educating people on how to take care of their home. And that's not what this program is at all. But in reality, it's to recycle in a better fashion abandoned homes or homes that have been foreclosed on. People walked off them because they were in bad shape. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Other questions? Mr. Lightfoot.
As far as the two positions or contract spots that you'd be hiring, the person that sought out the properties, do they make the final decision? I mean, do they come to the city and say, I've got these 3 different properties that look like they'd be great? Do they make the decision which property to buy and not to buy, or does the city make that choice?
The housing specialist works for us, so it would be a very intricate partnership in that they would, I would assume they would identify those properties and then come to us. I mean, the individual that has done it on previous NSP projects and has submitted an RFP for this project is very versed in doing this kind of work all over the metropolitan area. They want to help neighborhoods revitalize, and certainly they're not out there just purchasing homes without checking with us. So absolutely the city would be the one working with that and making that determination.
And would that same person also be doing that for Sugar Creek and Grandview?
Yes.
Okay. Just one other thing, and it was kind of touches on what Alderman Azier said as far as, blighted, dilapidated, whatever you want to call it. Surely a house that was in pretty good shape, but for some reason it's dirt cheap, would qualify to be bought for this program. I mean, for instance, you could buy a house for $50,000 that's in move-in condition. That's a really good deal that would appraise much higher. Or you could buy a house for $25,000, put $25,000 in it, and it's $50,000 there too. So either house would probably qualify, wouldn't it?
I'd have to look at the regulations, but I'm not sure why you would want to buy a house at $50,000 if it's in good shape. The whole purpose of the neighborhood stabilization program is to revitalize homes that have been neglected, abandoned.
Well, I was just using an example. The house right next door to me sold for $50,000 in move-in condition, but it's sat empty for a year.
Right.
And it's probably a $120,000 house. So I was just.
If the housing specialist came to me with 2 homes, one that was in move-in condition at $50,000 and one that was much cheaper or even the same price in much worse condition, I would encourage them to buy the one in worse condition, simply because the one in good condition would probably be sold at market and wouldn't need the program to help it. The other one is a property maintenance nightmare for the city and for the neighborhood services staff. Clearly no one's maintaining it. Our goal is to take those dilapidated, blighted, abandoned, vacant properties and fix them and make them an asset to the neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Anything, Mr. Van Buskirk?
I actually don't have a question. I do have some comments. Well, most of you probably already know my opinion regarding this issue, but just in case you've forgotten, I probably should reiterate. I believe this program is another prime example of gross misuse and waste and abuse of tax dollars that come off the backs of hardworking taxpayers all over our nation. In my opinion, our city has no business in the real estate business. These properties should be the responsibility of the owners. Someone holds a mortgage on those properties, and not that of the government. Of course, HUD has their fingerprints all over this huge government expenditure. Our project just being a small portion of that entire picture. HUD is a government agency that is corrupted and has cost the taxpayers of this nation billions of dollars and is still doing so in its waste. You wouldn't invest your own money into a project such as this. But in reality, you are. It's your tax dollars. It's our tax dollars. It's my tax dollars. It's tax dollars coming from people all over this nation going into this project. And I think it's a very flawed scheme, and I would in no way support it. Thank you.
Mr. Perdue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In a stark contrast of that statement, I have received a phone call this week about someone who's very concerned about a house next door to them that has been vacant for over a year. And they have a hard time mowing the lawn, they have a hard time keeping track of it, and they don't want to wait for the city to do it 2 weeks later. And they're dealing with this vacant house. There's something like this where we can keep our property values up, we can take care of our neighborhoods, we can reclaim these ones that landowners have moved out of town and have left these buildings to wear down, and make our communities better. And I think that we'd be foolish to not accept this grant and make our communities better and more profitable for our citizens.
Mr. Frazier.
Can you give me the definition of abandoned property? Does that mean that the people literally walk away and it's not owned by a bank and it's not owned by a person? To me, that's what abandoned would be.
According to the vacant and abandoned property ordinance, abandoned means that it's held by a foreclosure deed. So there's a trustee's deed or a foreclosure deed that has occurred on that property.
So foreclosure is abandoned?
Foreclosure usually means abandoned. There is vacant. One of the phenomenons that we've seen in this housing crisis is that there are people out there that can make their house payment, but because they owe so much on their property and it's valued at so little, we were watching them walk away. So there isn't a foreclosure at that point, and as we know, foreclosure takes lots of time. So that technically by ordinance would not be considered a abandoned house, but would be considered vacant after 90 days. So it kind of depends. I know there are lots of people use the word abandoned and vacant kind of interchangeably. The ordinance actually defines it once there's a trustee's deed or a deed of foreclosure. The difficulty that we've run into is that Jackson County is notoriously slow for uploading those documents onto their server where we're actually able to access them. So we don't always know. Lots of times neighbors know before we do that there's supposedly been a foreclosure take place.
Do we actually have homes? I mean, I asked the question because I was told this within my ward, but do we have homes in Raytown that maybe belong to a person that lives out state who've left it behind, who actually own it, so there's no money owed on it,
right?
But they don't really maintain it,
right?
People break into it, go in and out of it as they will, and it's been there for a long time, meaning years, 2 or more years. We do have property like that.
Absolutely. I think one of the difficulties in that situation that we run into is it's owned free and clear, so there's not a bank, it doesn't get foreclosed on. If they pay the taxes on it, which can be minimal depending on the value of the property, if they choose not to maintain it, we have the ability to remove junk, trash, and debris, or to do the grass and weeds. But other than that, for a property maintenance issue, our typical recourse would to go through the municipal court process. So we issue them a letter, they don't respond. We issue a summons, they don't respond. They live out of state, so they don't come to court. We're not going to go to California and pick them up on a warrant. So the property continues to decline, and we have no one to enter that.
Okay.
In those particular instances, I think this program would give us an opportunity to try and contact that owner and find out if they're willing to sell, especially if it's in a very dilapidated condition. Find out if they're willing to work with us on a purchase price and be able to make that structure viable again.
Yeah. And I'd hope we would target those homes. Who actually is going to be making the loan? Let's say the house is refurbished and the person makes an offer on it. Who's going to loan the person the money to buy that home? Is it going to come from the state or federal government or an independent agent?
Our hope at this point is that the nonprofit company that the housing specialist is with would actually do that, that they would hold the note. not the city, not the individual cities or HUD, that the note would actually be held with the nonprofit that is the the housing specialist.
The nonprofit, okay. And then the third thing, and again, it's just a kind of reflection on what Mr. Van Buskert said. In programs like this, you're looking at two sides of the coin. One is that we all pay federal tax dollars. The question is, how much of the federal tax dollars come back to Raytown that we pay, as opposed that never come back to Raytown? I know at one point I did study this, and it was back when I actually taught school. We were only getting 42 cents back for every dollar that we sent to Washington, whereby Massachusetts, Mr. Kennedy's state, was getting something like $1.48 for every dollar they sent. People don't oftentimes think about, do they really get any of their money back that they send to Washington? And the other side, and so this is a good deal because we're going to bring actual federal dollars back into Raytown to make our city just a little bit better. The other side of the coin is that a lot of people are certainly concerned about the overall national debt as it stands and the amount of money that we're going to be, I should say, the amount of debt that we're going to be passing on to our grandchildren in the future when we are no longer around, that they're going to have to pay. So the question is this the kind of program that the federal government really needs to be involved in? I think that's where Mr. Van Buskert was coming from. I'm not personally making my opinion here of what I think is good or bad for Raytown or for the federal government or the country as a whole, but just showing these are two possible views that everyone's really concerned about, at least at this time period in history. I do think it's a worthy opportunity for the people of Raytown to get federal tax dollars back, since we do have a number of truly abandoned homes, like you just stated, that have been left by property owners that just don't care. They don't live here. They don't care about selling. They figure they can't sell. They don't want to put any money into it. It's simply not worth their time. And if we could address these, that would be a major asset to do something we have not been able to do in the past 12 years since I've been on the board.
Mr. Ertz.
Thank you, Mayor Bauer. This is another program just like sidewalks and overlays where we're returning back to the citizens of Raytown taxes that they paid. The debate over what the federal government ought to be doing isn't really, I don't think, for us. We can agree on a lot of things there, I'm sure, but I want to thank city staff for continuing to go after grant money for this town. I don't know what, if you get a third of this, I don't know what number that's going to put it up to, but it's a fantastic thing. You guys have met the challenge of going out and helping us with our budgeting crises by continually bringing forward to us hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I just commend you. I want you to keep it up. Thank you.
This absolutely goes to where we want to spend a lot of our energy the next couple of years, and that is back in our neighborhoods. And I think when we help to enhance the neighborhoods, we help every house in the city of Raytown. So, and again, this is the first reading. We'll have some more debate on this at the next meeting also. One last comment from Mr. Kramer.
And kind of to go off what Mr. Ertz said, he kind of stole my thunder about that grant money. I rarely hear an occasion where people are upset that we have gone after and captured grant money. And it simply astounds me when somebody does find offense with bringing in grant money. It's money that's going to be spent. And as Mr. Ertz said, it's not our place to determine what the federal government does or doesn't do with that money. But if they're going to put it out there, thank you for going and getting that.
Okay, moving on to item number 11. Ask the clerk to perform the first reading on item number 11, please.
An ordinance authorizing and approving a municipal agreement with the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission for the bridge rehabilitation, approach pavement work, and sidewalks on Blue Ridge Boulevard over 350 Highway.
Mr. Knoll, anything to add on this topic, sir?
This is to provide authority for MoDOT to reroute traffic through the city of Raytown while they rebuild the bridge over 350 Highway on Blue Ridge Boulevard. They simply need our authority to set up that traffic detour that will take people down 63rd Street, Raytown Road, and then to Gregory around that bridge that will be closed. And this will also cement an ongoing process where we've been clearing the salt off, not the salt, been clearing the roadway in the state right-of-way on Blue Ridge Boulevard, and this will put that in writing that we are going to clear the salt from that area, but we will not be responsible for maintenance of the roadway. Here to answer any questions.
Questions, Mr. Nolan, item number 11. Ms. Melson.
And so the bridge is going to be totally torn down, and so there'll be no access at all, and so that's why there's a rerouting of it from the point at 63rd down around and back up to 350?
That is correct. Some of the substructure will remain, but the entire deck will be removed and replaced.
Okay. And then are they going to bring sidewalks across that?
Yes, they are on the east side. That will connect with the sidewalks that we installed with our
right,
area.
That's what I was going to. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Azure, anything to add on that topic? You still have your cup on the wall there, sir.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm okay.
All right. Any other discussion on item number 11? This is the first reading, so we'll be tackling this again at the next meeting. No questions, comments to Mr. Knoll? Moving on to item number 12 then, please. Thank you, Mr. Knoll.
An ordinance authorizing and approving a cooperative agreement with the Mid-America Regional Council for funding operations of Operation Green Light Traffic Control System in an amount not to exceed $9,623.25.
Mr. Knoll, anything to add on this topic?
Just an interlocal agreement as part of Operation Green Light that is a traffic optimization program to coordinate green lights or traffic signals in case of traffic accidents that may impede other local roadways. This is a 5-year agreement. The first 2 years total $2,612.03, and it will ramp up as the grant money associated with this starts to reduce. There are 3 signals within the city, and we pay a proportional share of our 3 over the total, which I think is somewhere around a couple of hundred traffic signals throughout the metropolitan area. So we pay based off of the total cost incurred, so we pay our fair share of the project. So we get some other benefits from this as well. If we need to modify traffic signal timing, this provides us the expertise to change that traffic signal timing as well.
Questions, Mr. Knoll? Mr. Van Buskirk.
How many intersections do we have that are actually involved in this?
We have 3 intersections.
Where are those located?
They're on Blue Ridge Cutoff. They're at 55th, 59th, and 63rd Street on Blue Ridge Cutoff.
How beneficial do you feel this program has been towards
at this time we
assisting us as far as traffic flow at those intersections?
At those particular intersections, they've helped at 59th Street with some new traffic signal timing to help traffic negotiate through there. So I think it has been beneficial to the city. Also beneficial that with Operation Green Light, MoDOT participates, and the traffic signals on 350 Highway are part of that as well. So I believe it has been beneficial to the city.
So, but as far as our other intersections where we have that type of traffic control, we do the timing ourselves?
That is correct. At this current time, we do. So there is some legislation that may require us to do some significant changes, and if those do come about, they said they will help us with that traffic signal timing at the rest of the traffic lights in the city.
Now I noticed that it says this fiscal year's requirement is $2,612.03. I'm looking back at the chart on page 15 and 22, and now this is broken down, I guess, not into our fiscal year certainly, but into a yearly cost. It indicates a yearly cost in 2011 of $1,512.23. Now, what's the difference there in the 2006-12 that we're seeing?
It is a combination of the first 2 years. It's 2010 and 2011 that we would be paying. We're behind on the 2010 payment, and the 2011 payment will be due before the end of the fiscal year.
I had added those together and did come up with that amount. I was curious about that. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Willith, who's holding 940? No one? Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding item number 12?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Azier?
I've been waiting for this item to come up for months because I want to ask this question. And I'm hoping you can answer it. It says the major objective of the project is to reduce travel times during rush hour and thereby reduce travel expenses and pollution. Why do they want to increase travel time and travel expenses and pollution when we don't have rush hour? Why don't we just keep it consistent? I mean, I noticed, for example, in North Kansas City, they have a light at every corner, and it's almost like 10 straight lights, but you only have to stop once to get to the other end. I'm just wondering, why don't all cities try to, when gas is approaching $4 a gallon, to try to help the public out by reducing travel expenses?
I believe they do, and this project will help coordinate those signals so that you get that coordinated effort. Because I've been through North Kansas City, and it felt like Operation Red Light sometimes, where I hit every single red light going across Burlington. I think this is more coordination of those traffic signals. On 350, they provide a little bit more green light time for 350 during rush hour than non-rush hour events for the majority of the traffic. So that's what they're trying to do, is during rush hour make it as smooth as possible on the major traveled directions. So it's what they're trying to do with this project. If we can decrease travel times at those particular times. During non-rush hour, there's generally not enough traffic to have a significant impact on the travel time.
I can understand 350, but the logic would be if we could save travel expenses, pollution, and travel time in all areas, any time of day, it would be a smart thing to do, I guess. I mean, I didn't get the answer why it would or wouldn't be, but thank you.
Mr. Van Buskirk, you had a comment?
No, sir.
Okay. Kramer's telling me he's got 943, so we need to stretch it. Anything else regarding item number 12? Any other questions for Mr. Knoll before we move on? None appearing. Everybody's got their bags packed up here.
A second.
Ms. White has the motion to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Kramer. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.